while waiting. Hey, Debbie, how you doing?
Hello.
Welcome in. Gary, how you doing? Have you been there this whole time, Gary, just being very quiet?
Hello, Martin.
How you doing? I hope you weren't waiting on me. I've been doing bits and pieces towards an article I'm writing that I've been putting off all day because of small child and stuff. I'll
No
be
problem.
recording after anyway. I will warn everybody this is recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, let me know. But I like to put this up afterwards because I think people who can't stay up till this late, and I can completely understand that, they do like to be able to see it afterwards. But if you've got a problem, we can sort that. Taking that as no problem so far.
Perfectly fine with me.
What news from everybody this fine day? I'm going to wait a few minutes till people drop in, and then we'll start doing readings and performances and what have you, hopefully.
Oh, well, nothing new over here.
Yeah, all quiet.
All quiet, yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm. Debbie, how's yourself?
Myself is good because I am officially finished with the semester.
Hey!
Yes.
Yay.
Yes. I also have to say, Martin, yet again, this semester has reaffirmed the fact I don't want to ever do lighting. I don't.
I appreciate that because it leaves more work for me. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like I was talking to somebody today about Ulysses, and she was saying, "Oh, I don't like the first three. I didn't like it when I started." So I went to sort of the party line, which is, if you don't like the first three chapters of Ulysses, there is nothing wrong with you. That is about a self-indulgent fool, and it's actually meant to be a parody. You could start on chapter 4, and you might enjoy the book completely. But please, it's okay if you don't like it. Enjoy not liking it. That is a good thing. I know far too many people who try to do everything in the theater, and very few of them do any of it any good.
So I will admit, I don't mind operating lighting and doing the cues.
Yeah.
It was dealing with the rest of it, especially I think part of it is I had never been in a theater with a catwalk that high.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you don't like lights, you don't need to be doing lighting.
Yeah, that made me a little, I'm not like afraid of heights, but being up that high, trying to make sure that I have the equipment steady while I'm doing everything I need to do.
Which is nearly as heavy as you are.
Yeah, is a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I went through a period when I had, I won't say a fear of heights, but a great distrust of them, owing to an experience on a telescopic ladder. How you doing, Michelle? So yeah, I mean, what always amazed me, especially in Dublin, I would get these people who are falling all over themselves saying, "Oh, I want to do lights, 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 I want to do lights," and they would spend hours pursuing me to get me to take them on as an intern on some show or another, and say, "Okay, I will," and then we get to the place. And they'd immediately say, "Yeah, I'm no good with heights. I'm frightened of heights." Or, "I'm actually colorblind." Or, "Yeah, I can't do evenings." Like, why do you want to do lights? But that's standard. How are you, Michelle? What news and excitement?
Hey, good to see you.
Great to see you.
Exciting. Nothing is exciting about another day in quarantine.
Have you been able to look at that house, that new house of yours at all, or it's like completely off of?
Yeah, no, I've continued to work on it, so that's been good. Been able to get out of the house for that purpose. And
Yeah.
besides going to the grocery, so.
Yeah. And where are you? You're at home in quarantine, obviously, Gary. I've seen the pictures.
Yep. I'm in my little cave.
Mm-hmm. And Debbie, where are you these days?
So they kicked us off campus, and I was living on campus. So now I'm at a friend's house, still up in northern Indiana.
Mhm.
I'm on the lake, so I'm kind of excited for that once we get a little bit more warmer weather.
Oh, good. That would be something. And the mosquitoes too. That would be great. To let you know, Michelle, I got to know because she was in a show of mine. Gary, I've met from coming to a show of mine, and then I did the lights for you in Penzance, and generally
Yep.
just communality around the theatre world. And Debbie was a student of mine. They were my TA for a while, weren't you?
Yes, I was. That was my last semester at Jefferson.
Yeah. And so Debbie knows better than to ever try to teach theatre because clearly it is impossible. Anyway, good to see everybody. Happy Shakespeare's birthday to you, and also sad Shakespeare's anniversary. The weirdness of the same
Yeah.
date being given for both.
Really? He
Yeah.
died on the same day? He died on
Died on his birthday.
Technically, Shakespeare was christened. We don't have a birth record. We have a christening record for Shakespeare for April 23rd, 1564. But we believe with some degree of fact. How you doing, Claire? We believe with some degree of fact that he died on the 23rd of April, 1616. So it is either his 456th birthday, or at least the 456th celebration of his christening, or his 404th anniversary of his death. You can pick whichever.
How old did he live to be in real time?
56 years old,
56.
I think. Was it? Hang on, I read it. 52 maybe. Let me root it out. I had this dug up someplace.
Yeah.
52, sorry, yeah. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, he was 6'4".
Really?
Yeah, he'd have been, and considering the average height back then would probably have been close to 5'7". He'd have been pretty much useless in most of his plays. Things people don't talk about. I have no idea where they got this idea that he's that height. Maybe it's the length of his grave or something. Just spot that on. Say no. It says that when you look him up on Bing, because I use Bing because
They do have pretty detailed records of the property of the company. Maybe they have something that's referred to as Shakespeare's costume and it's really tall.
Yeah, they probably have, his inseam or something. Sure, his tailor had that information.
I think we're referring to something else sideways, but I was talking about Joyce's love letters earlier, so we won't go down that dirty road. If anybody wants a cheap, not safe for work thrill, look up Paget Brewster reading Joyce's love letters, or just look them up. She reads the cleaning parts.
I know there's something questionable involving an orange.
Wow, I didn't expect you to go there straight away, but that's okay. Yes, no matter what your predilections, he's into something weird at some point along the road. But we're not here to talk about Joyce, not tonight anyway, even though I will. One of my favorite Shakespeare conspiracies is in Ulysses in the National Library, or what's now the National Library of Ireland. Stephen Dedalus talks about, he expostulates on his theory that Hamlet's grandson was Shakespeare's grandfather. And we all know, of course, that Shakespeare was Irish because he was probably a Catholic.
Okay.
There's
And that kills conversation for the night. Sorry, Claire?
There is some slightly credible stuff to suggest that he might have been Catholic.
And that's the same as Irish. What's your point? I said that on on a video lately, and somebody cracked up completely, saying, "Yeah, I completely actually see where you're coming from with that." It's always been suggested. It's weird. Anybody who's vaguely Catholic, the Irish will take. But Shakespeare, regardless of what he did or didn't profess, or what height he may or may not have been, or what his inseam was, or what was lying, how far down his inseam his talent went, we're
Was Shakespeare ever married? Did he have any offspring?
Yes. He was married, he has offspring, and he willed his wife his second best bed.
which wasn't the bad thing that people said. I'd always thought that's a bit crappy, but apparently the second best bed was standard. That was the bed of the marriage because the second best bed was probably the one that's gotten most use.
And the best
bed,
one was for guests.
and that would be not the better one. It would be the better quality one, but it wouldn't be the one that had a sign of your romance, presumably seeping through the straw. Yeah, it's after 9:30. I can say dirty things and drink alcohol.
Cheers.
But I thought what'd be nice to do this evening, given the nature of it, would be to do Shakespearean quotes and what have you, and lines and stories. We've got good stories about shows and bad stories about shows. I've got a really nice one about Macbeth that I like to tell. That isn't great, but it's okay. Well, I'm going to start, if it's okay with you, with Sonnet 130, largely because this is my Zoom, so screw you guys. Is that okay with everybody?
Certainly.
Do we
Correct
have
answer. Sorry?
Do we have a choice?
No, not really. It gives you a chance to ignore me and find the bits that you're looking to say. So think of it that way.
Wait, where's the mute button for the host?
I think it's the go directly to Kentucky Shakespeare, do not pass go. I'm sure there is one somewhere, but
kidding.
I'm not going to tell you yet. Anyway, Sonnet 130 is oddly enough my favorite sonnet. Don't know why. Always liked it. Well, actually, I kind of do know why. It's if I could characterize the difference between Shakespeare and Marlowe, I would say that Marlowe's aspirations are greater, but he doesn't quite hit them. Whereas Shakespeare is more real and level-headed, and he hits it much more. He's a better turn of word. Marlowe got kind of distracted by doing other stuff, and this kind of is, yeah, it feels it for me. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black hairs grow on her head. I've seen roses damasked, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes there is more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. I think it's great. It means that we can all be a bit crap and
One
be,
and only.
yeah, we're all ordinary humans and we can still have hope.
That was a lovely reading, but not quite as exciting as Catherine Tate's,
I'm sure.
which I'm about to put into the chat.
Ooh, Catherine Tate, welcome. Oh, there you are, Catherine Tate. How you doing, Liz?
Welcome. You just missed his rendition of Sonnet 130. It was very.
I know, I was texting her. She knew she didn't want to see it. She knew. Let's have
Very
a look.
nice, Martin.
You can watch it on the recording.
I will later.
I take back all my teasing. I want to hear Martin do all kinds of Shakespeare. I love that accent.
Michelle, I'm still not paying in my shows, but you will get cast again. Anyone else have a piece that they fancy reading tonight? Oh, Liz. So you know everybody else. You don't know Debbie. They were my teaching assistant in their last year at. Oh, where did I teach?
Jefferson, JCTC.
Liz was living here for what, about 4 or 5 years, was it?
No, I was only in Louisville for 2 years, man.
2 years. But I played Dungeons and Dragons with her once, and she's cool. Actually, she's really cool, but that's another matter.
I like that that's your standard for whether someone's cool, whether they play
No,
Dragons.
no, notice I said but. Anyway, who fancies throwing out a bit of Shakespeare at us?
Well, I was going to read a sonnet as well, so
God, I hope it wasn't Sonnet 130.
it wasn't 130, so
Oh, thank God.
something different. In fact, it's number CLIV, which is 154.
Sonnet Clive, my favorite.
The last one of his sonnets.
Cool.
So, and it goes like this. The little love god, lying once asleep, laid by his side his heart-inflaming brand, whilst many nymphs that vowed chaste life to keep came tripping by. But in her maiden hand the fairest votary took up that fire which many legions of true hearts had warmed. And so the general of hot desire was sleeping by a virgin hand disarmed. This brand she quenched in a cool well by, which from love's fire took heat perpetual, growing a bath and healthy remedy for men diseased. But I, my mistress's thrall, came there for cure, and this by that I prove. Love's fire heats water, water cools not love.
Nice. Nice.
Nice.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah. Any particular reason why that one?
Well, I read several of the sonnets, and for some reason that one just kind of grabbed me. I like the whole message of it, especially the final 2 lines there. So, and it was, I don't know, it's easy to understand. It's not very complicated. The language is pretty straightforward. So the message is easy to get.
Cool. Cool. I approve and appreciate. Anyone else out there fancy?
I was thinking about reading the first monologue I ever memorized from Shakespeare, and also I think potentially the first monologue I ever memorized, or at least the first one I memorized for fun. But if we're all doing sonnets, I might as well recite the one whose number is tattooed on my back.
But don't feel obligated.
There's no Sonnet 666.
And
It's 150.
let's see if you can guess what sonnet it is when I say it's tattooed next to a yellow ginkgo leaf. The ginkgo is not important.
What is important, the yellow or the leaf?
Yes, the yellow and the leaf. Does anyone know which sonnet it is?
Not off the top of my head.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Nope.
Really?
No, that's the one I did. I'm boring.
Sonnet what?
72. That time of year thou mayest in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none or few, do hang upon the boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day, that as with sunset faded in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the dying of such fire, the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, the deathbed on which he must expire, consumed by that which he was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long.
Cool.
Okay.
Heard that one.
Is that off memory?
Yes,
That
it might not have, it might have been
Ooh, that was
98%.
the sort of thing.
What was that?
That was not sonnet 72, and at least
82.
not 82. Okay, I misheard you then. All right.
I think I misspoke. It's been a while since I figured out what the Roman numerals are.
Yeah, okay.
Bad with the Roman numerals. But I love that poem.
Your back.
And I can't see my back. We can check. I got it the last day I was studying in Salamanca before I went to England.
Cool.
What do you like about that poem?
It very much encapsulated what I wanted my time in Europe to mean. And actually, I was dating a Spanish boy, and he actually had a copy of Shakespearean sonnets and read that one in Spanish. And I had remembered reading that sonnet and loving it beforehand. It was already one of my favorite sonnets. But that ending, that idea, everything is going to end, basically. It talks about fall and twilight and ashes of a dying fire. Basically, everything is temporary.
Mhm.
But because of that, you shouldn't be sad. You should love it even more. And so I was about to leave all of my friends in Spain onto a new adventure in England that was only going to last a month. And I wanted to, in some ways, be happy because it happened, not sad that it was over.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But
And by
yeah,
the way, it's 73.
I was right the first time.
73, yes. I thought you said 72, and that wasn't it.
Yeah, I heard
It's not
72.
82 either.
Fun fact, guys, I'm terrible with numbers. I can recite an entire sonnet, but I can't tell you what number it is. It's the same thing with with years, I can tell you the entire narrative of some historical arc, and you ask me what year something happened, I'm like, this is the decade-ish.
Yeah,
For some reason, numbers just don't stick in my brain. It's weird.
that's quite all right.
Welcome to Shakespeare Math Chat with your host.
Like you were saying how old he was and what year, I'm like, eh.
That's
I
allowed.
tell you his father was probably a tanner / glove maker, but I can't tell you what year Shakespeare died, even if I know the 400th anniversary was 2016. Then I have to do math, and it hurts, and I stop.
The easy thing to know is this is 2020. He died in 2016. Next year, it will be 2021. He'll have died in 1617. The year after that, it'll be 2022. It's really simple. It's really simple. Just take away 404 from whatever year it is. Fine. It's easy. See, 404. Not here anymore. Anyone else want to do an old Shakespearean bit, sonnet or otherwise? Or will we just get the sonnets out of the way now and come back to the other stuff later?
Well, if we're on a sonnets kick,
I did not think I would start this, but yeah, cool.
I know it's like the sonnet, but it's a good one, which is Sonnet 116.
Cool.
So that one's stuff. I think that's one of the first poems I memorized too. So let's see how well I remember it. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within its bending sickle's compass come. Love's not alters not with brief hours or weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
Perfect.
Cool.
And beautiful.
Gary's here, I presume, as prompter.
Sorry?
I just heard when Gary said perfect, I thought, is he reading along?
I am indeed, yes.
We'll all
Because
need
I
the
don't know
help.
numbers, I
Wow.
thought you were
I
about to
couldn't do
do,
it from
shall I
memory.
compare these two?
Amazed that people memorize and remember.
I can't memorize 2 lines for a play, so I mean, I am all impressed. I am all impressed.
Yeah, every time I'm in a play, I just guess what my next line is, and I'm really lucky I just always guess right.
Oh, I
Mine's
wish I had that kind of accuracy, but anyway.
As long as there's not numbers in my lines, I'm good.
Yes, yes. So 116. Why? It's not even a prime number.
So I love a lot of things about this poem. For one, I love the way the words fit together. There's a lot of assonance in it, and a lot of not even words that rhyme, but words that there's repetitive consonant sounds.
Mhm.
And alliteration. So like, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. You got all these M's right away off the bat. And it just it knits the poem together in interesting ways, for starters. I love that. I love that. I love the first two lines is, oh, by the way, everything I'm saying might not apply to you. That doesn't mean you're not in love, which is rare. You don't really find a lot of media that are very famous about love that say, you know what, it's different for everybody. And you just got to know what's in your heart. And that's how you know you've got it. And, it's, I don't know, so often you see so many things about love where it's like, it's real if they're the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning and the last thing you think about when you go to sleep each night. And I love my husband. He is often not the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning.
And if he is, it might not necessarily be a good thing. I'm that husband, but for a different person.
And I love that, let's see. But, at the same time, into a lot of things about love, about how it's, it's sort of this constant presence that, you always come back to, and it doesn't shake and it doesn't alter. It's just sort of there, and it's true. In my experience, at least. And I think, and it's just a beautiful poem, top to bottom. I mean, Shakespeare did write poetry sometimes, and he was a little good at it.
A little bit.
Actually, better known in his lifetime as a poet than a playwright.
Yes, he was.
If you had said, do you know about William Shakespeare while he was alive, they would probably be like, oh, you mean the guy that wrote Venus and Adonis?
I remember back when I took my Shakespeare class ages ago, somebody was writing like a list of the great writers of their time, or like right after Shakespeare died. And literally all they said about Shakespeare is like, and there was also this guy Shakespeare who wrote plays that a lot of people liked. And, this is after he'd been like effusively going on Marlowe and everybody else. He was just.
Oh, was this was Nicholas Green? What? No, Green was the fellow who knocked him. Was this? It wasn't Ben Jonson, because I think Ben Jonson was fairly effusive, wasn't he?
I don't remember. It was so long ago.
But yeah, I mean, Shakespeare did not hold the sway of the university wits, as they used to be called. They thought him a peasant, which is good for you, mate. I like peasants myself. Anyone else want to drop in with a bit of Shakespeare now, or anything to add in right at this minute? Looking towards the people who haven't spoken yet. There is no pressure. If you want to do some, great. And if you don't, that's cool too.
I have something.
Excellent.
I turned my favorite scene in Macbeth into a monologue. My favorite scene is Act 4, Scene 1. I'm obsessed with the Weird Sisters, probably more than obsessed, but and I used this as an audition monologue, and not for an actual audition, but my professor really liked it and I got an A. So
Well, it must have been an extreme distinction and good taste.
Yes. So I will share with you. Thrice the brinded cat hath mewed, thrice and once the hedge pig whined. Harpier cries, 'tis time, 'tis time. Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw. Toad that under cold stone, days and night hath 31. Sweltered venom sleeping got, boil thou first in the charmed pot. Double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Fillet of a fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake. Eye of newt, toe of frog, wool of bat, and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blindworm's sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth, boil and bubble. Double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witch's mummy, maw and gulf. Of the raven, salt sea shark, root of hemlock digged in the dark. Gall of liver of blaspheming Jew, gall of goat, slips of yew, slivered in the moon's eclipse, nose of Turk and Tartar's lips, finger of birth strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drab. Make the gruel thick and slab. Add thereto a tiger chaldron for the ingredients of our cauldron. Double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Cool it with a baboon's blood. Then the charm is firm and good.
Bravo!
Nice work.
Very nice.
Good to
Very
hear
nice.
again. Good to
Good
hear
work.
again. It was. It was very good work. I don't want to put any pressure on anybody. So if anyone else wants to pop up with something,
No,
Sorry?
thanks. I pass.
that's perfectly fine.
Martin, you're
Yes,
Uh,
we've entered the phase where your microphone starts buzzing.
starting to buzz.
It's so reliably 30 minutes in.
Okay.
This is on every conversation. That little, can I say bollocks? That little bollocks of a son of mine, every time he's on this thing, he'll come in and he'll grab the mic and he'll wave it around like it's a bloody magic wand. And the minute I say, hey, immediately the only thing he can do is drop the mic on the floor.
Yeah.
I do not recommend a good mic being dropped on the floor. I'm impressed, to be honest. I still get 30 minutes out of it. Anyway, thanks for the alert on that, because
Yeah.
otherwise,
All right, I want to throw out something for conversation here. That is
excellent.
a line in the monologue that Debbie just read for us that just jumped out at me for some reason. The third witch, one of her ingredients in the cauldron, liver of blaspheming Jew.
Yeah.
I thought, what?
It's not an actual liver.
Okay, is it
It's
an
a-
actual Jew? That's more to
No, it's not a human at all. It's a plant. It is said to
Ah.
have been a plant.
the.
I
Okay.
had to do the research for this, and I was wondering about some of these things, and it's an old plant apparently.
Ah, okay, okay.
Apparently
say
they
that-
all are. I was reading recently, all of the stuff in that are just different
Ah,
plants.
Most of it. The
Hmm.
birth strangled babe is actually a literal
Okay.
birth strangled babe. There are some that there is debate whether or not it's a plant or an actual thing, but
Hmm.
most of it, yes.
cool. Either way, I think we can agree that if there was a chance to get in an anti-Semitic jibe, it probably would have been taken back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Guys, how much Shakespeare knew about plants between that and Gertrude's monologue and Ophelia's like, here's some rue that means you suck.
A foreigner will step up now and say, "Easy, no, you were born in a city." Yeah, no, I mean, when you grew up rural, or in the case back then, it would have been pretty rural, you would be very much more aware of different plants. Further to that, at that time, particularly within art, different plants were said to have different importances. Like the whole list of plants that Ophelia reams off, they all have significances, both in the art of the day and also in ways of medicining people. And I use the word medicine as a verb for the exact reason it's wrong. Yeah, no, so it's a bit, it's intriguing, but yeah, it would have been much more well known. I mean, we always think that, oh, how did they know all these things? And then we forget that we know, like, the capitals of dozens of countries needlessly. I mean, do we really need to know that the capital of Nigeria is Lagos?
I mean, it'll probably save you on Jeopardy someday.
Exactly. We know all these weird.
But there's no
things.
planned Jeopardy, so I mean.
Well, there you go.
You
well,
know,
I mean, that's the thing.
Bring up Ophelia's planned monologue because I'm going to bring that up next as one piece of Shakespeare that I absolutely love because it's so heartbreaking. I mean, honestly, even more so than a lot of the they're dead scenes to me, because it's the point in the play where okay, I'm sorry for the folks who don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of every act and scene of Shakespeare in their minds. Not long before this, Hamlet stabbed Polonius through the curtain, thinking it was Claudius. Polonius falls down on the ground. He's dead. And a little bit later, earlier in the scene, rather, Laertes comes back and is like, what the crap, my dad is dead, I'm gonna kill some son of a bitch. Which is a very interesting foil to how Hamlet reacts to that business. But that's another side. That's something different. But immediately, so Laertes is furious, and then his sister wanders on stage, and she's mad. You know, this was the thing that broke her father dying and Hamlet doing it probably. And she starts handing out imaginary flowers, saying, you know,
or real flowers, depends on the production.
That's true. Imagine real flowers. Who knows what Shakespeare intended? And saying, you know, oh, you know, here's rosemary. Here's rosemary. That's for remembrance. Pray you love, remember. And here's pansies. That's for thoughts. Just going through all of these flowers, real or imaginary. And the people who are on the stage, it's Laertes, Claudius, Ophelia, and I think Gertrude's there too. Yeah, Gertrude
is there, but Horatio has left at this point.
Yes. And I love it because it's the point of the play when everybody realizes they've fucked up. Like, there is absolutely no possible justification for any action that could cause a poor girl like Ophelia to become this husk of herself. And realizing that, you know, something has to give, something has to change, because what they've done, it's proof that what they've done is wrong. Because the most innocent, sweetest person was driven mad by events that they all put into action. And it's really heartbreaking, like that feeling of knowing you hurt somebody that by absolutely no stretch of any possible imagination deserved it. And of course, you know, Laertes seeing what his sister, you know, he knows his father is dead, and now seeing what his sister has become, and seeing, you know, it's got a lot of pathos in it, which is why I love it so much.
It's a beautiful scene. And it's, I mean, it is the most tragic moment in the play. No disrespect, but Hamlet, you earned your death.
Yeah.
She did nothing. Her path through that play is horrific. I was watching the Globe production there actually, during just before it went, and yeah, every production I watch of Hamlet, repeatedly, I mean, a lot of the times they underuse their Ophelia, but wherever it is, you just see she did nothing to deserve this. She was only ever true.
I read something once where they said Ophelia is a comedy character stuck in a tragedy play. And that's her
Wow.
reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, normally people who were mad in Shakespeare were portrayed were clowns, or Edgar in King Lear is meant to be a figure of fun in so many ways when he's Tom of Bedlam, but nobody does that anymore because we've become sensitive and vaguely aware about certain select things. But yeah, she would have been a clown who was like, "Oh man, she's dying," and then we get to her burial, and here's another clown whose body's there already. It's not chance and coincidence. Anyway, anyone else want to pop in with something? It's really, yeah.
There is a line in that scene that, depending on how you act, it can just be the most heartbreaking thing ever. When Laertes comes and is asking for Ophelia, he says, "Dear maid, kind sister, sweet Ophelia." And in the recent production I was working on, we had it so that he was like standing right next to her and he had to say it 3 times. And I feel like that makes sense with the script because she doesn't actually look at him or recognize him until sweet Ophelia. And she hears her own name and it kind of calls her back. And just that moment, if you choose to act it in that way, which I think the text lends itself to being acted in that way, is just so heartbreaking to have this brother talking right at his sister and have her not know who he is. That's one of my favorite moments. It is slightly specific to the acting from the production that was my life before Corona. But I do think that moment is very much embedded in the text.
Tis. Before I forget, and we move on, I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit by reminding us that the why, well, not the why we're here, but the why we're doing something different today is it is his birthday. So in true cheesy form, I haven't been out to the shops to get cake, so I have a scone. It's very nice. Screw you all, it's really nice. I made it.
That are raisins? I've had your raisin scones. They're good.
No, I don't. I've run out of raisins, so yeah. So it's the raisin less. So it's not quite as nice as it could be, but it is pretty nice. So let's blow out the candle. Let's sing "Happy Birthday" and blow out the candle after. In true cringy, awkward stage format, we've all been there when we've been on stage at the end of a show, and somebody like the director's sister-in-law is having a birthday, and he's been made or she's been made make their cast sing "Happy Birthday" to somebody who really wishes they weren't there, and in this case, somebody who isn't even here. So let's do this awful cringy thing and blow out a candle together.
Oh my gosh, with banjo accompaniment.
I've already had to learn how to play Happy Birthday because of Zoom birthday.
God, you'd know this was a Kentuckiana centered group, wouldn't you? On the well, we'll take your lead, Claire, because we shouldn't be following my singing.
Happy
Birthday to you. Happy birthday
to you.
Happy
birthday, dear Shakespeare. Happy birthday to you. On the count of 3.
to Death Day.
Happy Death Day. Happy
Death
Death Day.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday
To you. Happy Death Day, dear Shakespeare. Happy Death Day to you. On the count of 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, we did it! All 4.
Hey. And that shall feature on some kind of TV show that features cringy zooms from during the COVID crisis.
Banjo makes everything better, though.
Oh, no doubt.
That's going to feature higher on the cringy show.
Do you think Shakespeare is spinning in his grave, or is he just dancing and enjoying this pedantic celebration.
Hard to say. I do wonder. I mean, sorry, this is really dry because I didn't put any butter on it. I do wonder sometimes, if he was alive today, or if she was alive today. I mean, Shakespeare could be anybody. That's always been my attitude.
Ah.
If they were alive today, if G was alive today, who or whatever Shakespeare would be writing today, would they be doing theatre? Would they be doing TV? Would they be doing movies? Would they be writing crappy YouTube video histories of things?
I think
What would they be
podcast.
doing? Sorry?
Podcast.
Well, that means that Shakespeare's a man under 35, so yeah.
Along those lines, Martin, the name of the actor escapes me, but the guy that plays Shakespeare on the BBC comedy Upstart Crow,
David Mitchell.
He does YouTube videos in his Shakespeare garb of like things that are hilarious about today's world. Like, don't talk about me this way. Don't say this. Don't do that. It's hilarious.
I think I saw a couple of them as promos, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Would it be theatre Shakespeare being today? Being comparatively lower middle class, maybe it'd be cheaper to get into than film in some ways. But given how many theatres I know in Britain and Ireland, and presumably here, and how you didn't go to the right college or you don't know the right person, would they be doing silly little YouTube videos with their friends? What think ye?
I think he would do the talk show circuit.
I think he would have absolutely bomb awesome Twitter account.
Yeah.
But I
He'd
mean,
be in a lot of college debt, and he would have dropped out.
it's been a long time since I remember studying what historical Shakespeare the guy did, but from what I remember, he was a bit of a jerk.
So podcast then, cool.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, he was.
I like to think that he would be writing comedy insults for drag queens. And part of why I think that is because I've done drag, and drag queens are the most cattiest, insulting people you will ever meet. You cannot change my mind on that.
I think the League of Drag Queens would come and personally deal with us if we tried to change the mind.
Yes.
On that.
So a lot of them give like crazy insults, and personally I'm a huge fan of Shakespearean insults because they are the best. And I see him, yes, he was a bit of a dick, so I see him fitting in, like, writing insults for various drag queens.
Last week, Martin, when you somehow left the Shakespeare group in my hands.
Yeah. Didn't have the IT
Claire
support.
was there.
One thing I mentioned is the fact that had Shakespeare been born 50 years later, we probably would have no plays from him because the theaters were shut down.
Yep.
So we tend to give all of this grace to Shakespeare, and I think this is kind of the point you're trying to get at. We think of him as like this godlike genius figure, but a lot also has to do with the time when he lived. It was right after theater started to get popular, right after the first main theaters were built in London. And so it was an important time. It's not just one singular genius. It's the time that he was born, and also all of his friends being like, let's get his plays together for posterity, because otherwise we would have lost like half of them.
Yeah.
So it's not just one singular revered genius like we like to think, because right now he might not have the tools to get into theater, because a lot of times you can be shut out of theater if you don't have the right training.
You don't have the right connections.
You know, I mean, I was very lucky because I had no theatre background at all going into college, and I happened to go into a college that had a great theatre, no theatre program. So it was kind of like, well, this is kind of like movies because I was like a typical white cis hetero guy. Like, yeah, I'm going to make movies. Quentin Tarantino's a genius. Blah, blah, blah. Usual bull. Yeah, I was really lucky, and I get great privilege being a guy and being foreign here. It means that I have a marginally better opportunity to get people to listen to me. Now, being a foreigner, though, in Louisville, I didn't go to school with anybody. Huge disadvantage.
Where'd you go to high school?
God. You remember that, Liz, I presume?
No, I don't.
I don't know. Did you go to Mail? Because I went to Manual. I don't recognize you.
That's the first question people ask is where you went to high school.
The
Every
sad thing
time.
is that you fit literally every stereotype for your high school.
Mm. But yeah, I mean, it's all a lot of luck. I mean, I know one woman, and she's desperate keen to break into directing. Desperate keen. I suspect she has some talent, and she is fighting so hard to get anybody to give her a look in, and it's frustrating to watch. So I mean, I'm trying to put her in contact with people who will listen, but you know, when you don't have the local connections, even never mind even the training in the background, because you know, do okay. It took me a while to crack here, but when you don't have the local connections, never mind anything else. When you don't have the somehow right that testicles give you, when you don't have any of the usual bits and pieces, it's very hard. You know, there's some really good. I've a feeling there's some really great writers in this town who maybe none of their friends have ever done theatre, or maybe they've been sort of brought up for one reason or another to go, yeah, that's not for me because that's not something I see me mates doing, or whatever. You know, we are very lucky, those of us around this computer screen, to have had the fortune to help us find here. Or maybe had the misfortune to help us find here because there's no money in this.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, there was no way I was getting into theatre before I went to where I went to college. If I'd gone to a better college, I'd have never gotten near a theatre. You know, that might be better, but that's a different day's discussion. Anyway, let's move on. Anybody got another chunk or bit or reminiscence they want to share? Favorite show you saw, or
I've got the chunk that I originally was going to read until everyone was like, let's do sonnets. And I was like, oh yeah, I have a tattoo involving one of those. I should probably recite that.
well, if you want to give it a shot.
The first one I was going to do, I think it's actually, now that I think about it, the second Shakespeare speech I memorized, because I had to memorize one my freshman year. But this is the first one I memorized for fun. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame the earth seems to me a sterile promontory. This most excellent canopy the air, look you, this brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, why, it appears no other thing to me than a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. What a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Nice bit. Nice bit.
Very nice. Very nice. Wow.
So which play is that from?
Hamlet, the one that Emo Not emo. I wasn't emo. My sister went through the emo phase, so I wasn't allowed to.
That's fair.
The high school me found that and was like, this is the best expression of how I feel.
Aw.
If you had asked me when I was in high school what play that was from, I would have said, Hair! I know that song. That's from Hair. I love those lyrics.
Why did you pick that one? I mean, I know it does resonate with. I presume this was something you were studying in school?
No,
Fine.
I was just a nerd. I
Mhm.
started reading. Okay, so my freshman year we read Romeo and Juliet, and I was like, this is kind of nice, but not my thing. Shakespeare was my thing. Romeo and Juliet is not my favorite play. I like it, but I think it's overrated in terms of Shakespeare plays.
There's a tragic love story that's far better.
Yes.
Just saying. Just saying.
And then my sophomore year, I started reading a book every 3 days for the next several years. And a lot of those included Shakespeare. Because of course, if you're attempting to read good pieces of literature every 3 days, a bunch of them are going to end up containing references to Shakespeare, which is going to make you more likely to read Shakespeare. And also, it's a lot easier to read a play in 3 days than it is to try and read Crime and Punishment in 3 days.
Yeah, that's not a good idea
It's not.
on many levels. Yeah.
Normally I was supplementing it with 10 hours of art assignments and audiobooks, which helped me get through things much quicker. But I was just reading Hamlet for fun, and that speech I just thought was absolutely gorgeous. It's a new person.
Hello, Yana. Is it Yana or Jana?
Donna. Just John.
Jana.
Yeah.
Sorry?
John with an A.
Hi, welcome aboard. Okay, so this is the first time I'm meeting her, actually. We've been chatting on text earlier, because that doesn't sound weird at all. There's a lot of people, but enough that I can manage. You can see the names in front, which helps, obviously. Some of these people I've worked with, some people I've played Dungeons and Dragons with. The literally only time, by the way, I've ever played Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know why I use that, because we do more stuff, I think, that's more exciting on Facebook chatting than anything else. Yeah, some I've worked with, some I've known. One person here made the mistake of being my TA for a year, but they got over it, didn't you, Debbie?
Mistake. It was a mistake.
Oh.
How are you doing anyway? Lovely to see you in face to face.
It's nice to see you too. I'm actually popping in just to say hello and goodbye because I'm exhausted. I'm actually suffering from Zoom fatigue.
You had a long one earlier, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and I had a bunch of online classes today too. So, but I didn't want to not say hello. Hello.
Oh, we're delighted you can make it. I know you're a Shakespeare person. You missed the cake, which was actually a scone, but we can blow out the candle if you wish.
Yes. It's definitely must-see
Blow,
TV.
winds blow.
Before we get rid of you, do you have a short line or quote from Shakespeare that you particularly like, and why? Or even just mention a favorite player, whatever is your favorite Shakespeare thing.
No, I think right now I feel like Titus Andronicus might be my favorite play just because it's the only thing more outrageous than what we're living through. So.
Oh, that's funny because it's terrifyingly true.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah,
Love it.
Yeah. Oh God, there's too many things. But I mean, does anybody really want to watch him eat Eric and Donald Jr.? But anyway, that's another discussion.
Yes, actually, I would watch that game show. That is a competition reality show I'd watch.
Especially if it was a pizza pie. I do enjoy productions that take that liberty.
I do too, and this cat wants to say hello.
Hello.
Just this one. Just this one.
The other one doesn't want to know.
Yeah, the other one's being shy.
That is allowed. That is allowed. Well, I will talk to you, Yana.
Jonna. Just it's
Jonna,
John with
okay.
an A. Yeah.
Want to
Totally.
get this right. I'll talk to you properly on Saturday, and we'll probably ramble along, chattering in between as well.
That sounds great.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you for
Nice to meet you
joining.
too.
See
Have
you
a
soon.
good one. Good night, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Zoom fatigue prevents her from getting. Oh, there she's gone. Yes, no, she's the dramaturg at U of L now.
Ah, nice.
And she's a big, big Shakespearean scholar. I invited her along. She said she'd try and make it if she could, but she knew she had mountains of Zooming to do. I don't envy her that. One a day is plenty for me. Today, this is my second or third today. Anyway, this one I've been looking forward to, though. I'm going to relate. Was somebody in the middle of doing something?
I just finished Hamlet and explaining why I liked it.
Well, I will talk of a favorite moment from shows in Dublin, and one in particular. So I've been working in theatre long enough to remember more bad shows than good shows, which is a problem because I've seen way more bad shows than good shows. And Shakespeare regularly crops up. And there's moments in shows that sort of stand out, and there's shows that were just terrible. I'm a big fan of Central European and Eastern European art, and particularly the Neue Slowenische Kunst movement, the NSK. Leibach would be kind of adjacent to that movement, but not really a part of it. And for the centenary of the Abbey, they brought in like this fantastically well-known company, and they did Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was just complete and utter shit. They didn't have all the things I looked for. But this isn't the one I'm going to talk about, although that is a show I regularly talk about. I'm not going to talk about the other Abbey production of Macbeth, which was going okay, and you know, it was a very, very, very bare set and very, very few things on it, except this one ladder. And this one ladder, when the ghost came in, he ran up the ladder and down the ladder after. And that was the only reason for the ladder. It's like you literally had this idea and you didn't follow through. It just felt like bad design. But I'm not going to talk about that one. I'm not going to talk about the basically dodgy King Lear I was in, because, you know, you don't need to hear about that. Although we had a great night with a very, very rough audience that I loved, but many of the actors didn't. Somebody told him to shut up, you arseholes. He was Australian. You expect that. I will talk about Dublin Shakespeare, who I did work with quite a lot. And when they did Macbeth, it was particularly mediocre. It was not a bad Macbeth. It was not a great Macbeth. It was a perfectly fine Macbeth. A friend of mine was in it, and a friend of mine was directing it. And I went along to see it. And this was before I'd worked with them. I didn't know them very well. I just knew Dublin Shakespeare. That sounds good, doesn't it? Dublin Shakespeare. Doesn't that sound like, oh, Dublin Shakespeare? Oh, yeah, I'm going to see them. They're like the top Dublin Shakespeare company. Yeah. They were the only Dublin Shakespeare. Anyway, it's going through, and it's going mediocrely ever after. And then we get to the scene where where Dunsinane Wood had come to, Birmingham Wood has come to Dunsinane. I always get that mixed up. And it was really, really weird. What happens is we have all the actors come on stage like this in a very sort of grey light. It almost looked like it was black and white. And then one of the not better actors on the stage said, "Let us put down our branches," or whatever the line is. "And now we shall talk on." He wasn't a bad actor, but he wasn't great. And his delivery for that was, "Let us put down our branches." It was like Plan 9 from outer space I was watching. Like out of nowhere. This fairly realistic pedestrian production of Macbeth. We've all seen them. They're okay. They're not great. They're not bad. They're fine. They're functional. Then we have this wonderful moment. The only real lighting effect in the play. This sort of piercing grey light that turns everything black and white. "Let us put down our branches." What had happened was, the day before the dress rehearsal, the three fellas from the cast were tasked with finding branches. So they did what everybody in Ireland does when they're asked to get branches. They go to the local forestry or the local national park. And they should have gone to Phoenix Park, which is outside of Central Park, the largest city park in the world, and it's the largest unkept one. And they should have gone there because there's nobody there. But they went to an actual forestry because they felt bad about cutting down branches off trees in Phoenix Park. So the tradition in Ireland is it's Christmas time. You're not paying €25 to some Egypt to give you a crappy little Christmas tree. You're going out to the local forestry after 6 o'clock in the evening when the rangers are all finished their day's work, and you're cutting one down and sneaking back. Of course, at a certain point, the rangers realised this, so they upped the levels of people minding the forestry later once you get to November. This show opened on the 1st of December.
Oh.
So the boys go out to the forestry, and they're all up with their little hand saws. They're about to start cutting down these branches. And the next thing, they hear a couple of cracks on the ground. And there's a fella looking up at them. It's pitch black. It's 6 and 7 in the evening. Well, lads, he's out for a nice walk. Yeah. Yeah, we are. It's a lovely night for a walk. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, I won't interrupt you on your walk. Carry on now on your walk. Where are you parked, lads? Over there. We're just on the way back to the car. Lovely, I won't interrupt you, so, and he walks off. And the 3 lads get down out of the tree shamefacedly and walk off to the car. They go back to the director, and he says, you were meant to be here half an hour ago. Yeah, we started late. Where are the branches? Well, about that. So, he says, this was the one thing we had a special effect for, which was meant to be a gobo, which didn't really look very good. A gobo being a thing to make it look like leaves. So we're just going to do what we'd been doing with the branches. Instead of holding branches like that, which will look weird, we'll just do that. And that'll be fine. So every night, that scene got better laughs than the porter did.
Oh.
Ouch.
The most memorable Macbeth I've ever seen. For that one scene.
Yeah.
Every other Macbeth has been better. But that one scene is the most memorable.
Oh.
That's my favorite Shakespeare performance story.
We've been missing, we haven't had many conspiracy theories. Does
Oh,
anyone have any?
you missed the one I gave out very early on.
Oh no, we've only had one, and it is the one from James Joyce that you mentioned, where Stephen Dedalus says that Hamlet's grandson was Shakespeare's grandfather.
Yes. That he's Irish, obviously.
Oh yes, and Catholic, which are the
We
same.
had three technically. What are you looking for? What are you wanting to say?
It's
There,
not.
I have a flame and the ability to mute.
It's not exactly a conspiracy theory per se, but I have this theory that Shakespeare was dealing with some gender issues, and more particularly in thoughts to Macbeth.
Mm-hmm.
Macbeth could only be defeated by someone not of a woman born.
Mm.
I translate that to being a genderqueer, non-binary person because they are neither male nor female.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it's not somebody who didn't have a natural birth or whatever. Like, it is somebody who was trans and can only be defeated. Macbeth can only be defeated by somebody born of a trans person.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of things I will stake my reputation on, but if I get to the pearly gates, Shakespeare is a heterosexual cisgender dude, I will eat my hat. No way.
Those sonnets are a little.
Yeah.
My new favorite conspiracy theory, I've been listening to the Folger Shakespeare podcasts, and one mentioned this theory, very popular in the early 1900s, that Bacon is actually the one, a person named Bacon, not the food.
Francis Bacon.
Is the one that wrote Shakespeare. But my favorite part about this, Francis Bacon basically wrote the foundational text for binary code and did a lot of work with ciphers. One of the first main texts on ciphers in the English language is by Bacon. And at this point, some Shakespeare scholars, and potentially even Folger, who collected several first folios, part of the work that he might have potentially been wanting to facilitate is looking in the first folios for discrepancies or places where, say, multiple letters were used to spell something versus one letter, to see if there's a code written in the first folios, or rather printed into the first folios, which is Bacon trying to tell everyone that he actually wrote the plays. And my favorite part is not the theory itself, but the fact that this was taken incredibly seriously about 100 years ago. Like, as a serious subject for academic inquiry.
It was a time of that, because I know I'm a big Joyce guy, in that I'm nearly 6 foot. But it's an old joke, and I still use it. That's what's funny. It's like he's still trying that joke. No, I'm a big fan of Joyce, and he's very, very, very big on how he misspells his words. You know, like there's still up there. Sorry, maybe not still. I've not been as close to academic circles, but I know there was like uproar over one edition of Ulysses spells good on a certain page with 5 O's, when clearly it is meant to be 4 O's that good. So that was a huge thing at that time, early 19th century, or early 20th century, I should say. The idea that, you know, hidden meanings within things. Everybody's trying to pass stuff off. I think it's partly owing to, you know, the growth of the mystery novel. Maybe it was just something that was in the air at the time.
Or maybe ciphers in World War I and World War II.
Yeah, things like The Riddle of the Sands and another literature of the time, it deals heavily in sort of hidden messages and secret meanings. And I mean, if you look at Enid Blyton's mystery novels for kids of the time, they're filled with people who write in secret with invisible ink and things like that.
I mean, there was also a giant world war where several countries were trying to come up with code and had to invent code or break code, and that made or break.
But a lot of the fascination with it predates it. Things like The Riddle of the Sands, for example, is
okay.
Well, if you're looking for something a little more contemporary, I remember reading this paper an age and a half ago, where they argued, not very persuasively, I don't think, but I guess you could see the case. This person said, number one, Shakespeare intended for his works to be written down. And 2, if you look at the part of The Tempest where Ferdinand and Miranda are playing chess, the letters and the line breaks you can read as representations of pieces on a chessboard, which was, I'll try to find that essay later, but it was
really intriguing sounding, though.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I wasn't 1,000% convinced, because I'm also not 1,000% convinced Shakespeare ever intended for his works to be written down. But you know, that's the first time I was ever exposed to, you know, oh, Shakespeare wrote a cipher in his plays. But if we're talking favorite conspiracy theory, I don't know. I'm rather fond of the one that I was talking about with you, Martin, which is the interpretation of Hamlet, where Laertes cursed Ophelia with madness so that he could sell her body parts to witches, and you know, settle his gambling debts as a student.
Student debt's real, yo. I mean, there's some wonder. I love some of the most, some of these bizarre interpretations that you occasionally get.
Yeah.
I remember somebody saying years ago that there's nothing in King Lear to that proves it doesn't all happen under the sea. And it's like, well, that's just ridiculous,
Wind? Blow you
Well,
wind?
the winds of the sea. I mean, that's the thing.
Let's literally
No,
take
it's completely. It's so puncturable, so fast. But you see attempts to try and interpret the plays,
Does it
and I
rain
personally,
under the sea?
sorry,
Does it rain under the sea?
do people have a kingdom of England under the sea?
Are there dogs under the sea?
Yeah, exactly. Does the King of France woo a woman who has been thrown over by her father under the sea? I'm sure on SpongeBob it does, but yeah, I mean,
Is the Little Mermaid really just King Lear redone?
Cordelia, the Little Mermaid. But yeah, I mean, her full name is Ursula Regan.
I mean,
But,
I watch an all mermaid production of King Lear. I mean, I've seen the productions of The Tempest that take place in space, so why not?
One of my favorite sci-fi films, Forbidden Planet, is basically that. Great example.
If Lear gets to sing, look at this stuff, isn't it neat? When you see my collection's complete, only he's talking about all of his knights that he ends up losing.
There is a space, if ever we are allowed the copyright for it, of a space for doing a Disney Lear or Disney Shakespeare. I mean, they did it with The Lion King, so why not?
Funny enough, I didn't grow up knowing that Hamlet and The Lion King were basically the same thing. And when I read Hamlet, I didn't first off think, oh my God, this is The Lion King. But then we were watching The Lion King in my Spanish class the year after I started reading Hamlet and read it multiple times. And what made me realize that Hamlet and The Lion King are basically the same thing was not, oh, scheming uncle killing the king. It was Zazu.
Yeah.
I was like,
thinking
oh
it
my
might
God,
be.
that bird, he's such a naughty advisor, vaguely pedantic, he's like Polonius. And then I realized.
Yeah. I would argue, because I haven't seen Kimba and I don't know the truth, I would argue that and I did actually, my master's dissertation was The Lion King as a representation of Shakespeare. So this is going to get tedious. I would argue that there's elements of a lot of Shakespeare that's thrown in there. Pumbaa and Timon are kind of like when with Simba are very much like Prince Hal and Falstaff. Falstaff sort of divided into the two. You look at Scar, and he's very Richard III, isn't he? He doesn't kill anybody. He has people to do that kind of thing for him. So much for Mufasa, off with his paws, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, it's actually a really sophisticated reworking of the play. In some senses, more so than Kurosawa's The Bad Sleep Well, which is also worth seeing. But I do like a good, ingenious reinterpretation of a play.
I'm possibly writing a Midsummer Night's Dream that's modern and complicated by things like queerness and polyamory.
I think I've seen that done on stage with the original Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh, never mind.
No, I mean, this is the great thing. There are 6 of us on this call. If we were all set to, and don't worry, I'm not going to make this happen, we could all take The Tempest, go away, sit on it for a week, and come back with, I won't say 6 completely different interpretations, but 6 very different production ideas. A good play, be it by Ibsen or somebody who's not as good as Ibsen, like Shakespeare. A good play, maybe showing my colors a little bit.
a good play can bear interpretation, because the better plays are about people and ideas. I know there's that like nice little trite thing like great people talk about ideas, or boring people talk about people. It's like, you need a bit of both. You need a bit of both. And, you know, at the end of the day, this can all be interpreted through our own lenses. I want the Irish Macbeth, you know, not the Irish Macbeth, the Dundalk Macbeth, which is on the borders with.
I'm pretty sure someone's done that.
Sorry?
I'm pretty sure someone's actually done that.
An Irish Macbeth, loads of people have. The border with Dundalk is a specific one, but any kind of border situation will work really well with Macbeth. You know, we could put it with the border with Mexico. We could go with the border between war-torn nations. We could go with the border between Indiana and Kentucky. You know, I mean, there's so many ways of interpreting it, and even two people doing the same idea. I've spoke of it being done on stage with the polyamorous and trans focus, or at least hinting at. But your take on it is going to be different to my take on it. It's going to be different to Gary's or Debbie's or Michelle's or Liz's take on it. Hello. You want to read Shakespeare for us?
Yeah.
Your wife is here to read some Shakespeare. What are you going to read? She's going to finish drinking first.
Tell me something.
Oh, random Shakespeare. What do you fancy? Actually, this one might do you. Have a read of this. Cleopatra. This is the speech Cleopatra gives after the murder of Antony. You should read it first.
Yeah.
Sight reading is not always wise.
It's very unwise, but I've also been drinking.
There is that. This is Joanne, for those of you who haven't met her before.
Hi.
Some of you have. Actually, all of you have you? Gary, have you met Joanne before?
Yes, we had met, but only briefly. I think she was involved in some Gilbert and Sullivan thing that I was part of too.
Yes, the 80 days thing.
Well, she was in that. It seemed like, weren't you in something else that we did?
Nope.
Nope.
I have one of those
I believe you dragged my childhood music teacher into that production.
I don't think there was dragging.
There was very little drag in the show, apart from the sailor.
Loved my sister and me. There was so much time not spent in class, but rather spent being like, you're going to play guitar in church now. In the spirit of Joanne, I'm getting more wine.
Do it.
And water and juice and all the others are perfectly acceptable.
But not as fun.
Don't feel like you're missing out if you're not drinking something strong.
That is true.
I'm back on the water. I'm host. I am technically hosting a Zoom. You can't do that kind of thing drunk. Dissolute, perhaps, but not drunk.
Is that in their T's and C's somewhere?
I think it would be more fun if Martin and Joanne, if you guys read the Gravedigger scene from Hamlet.
God, no, I would want to prepare that.
I'm really getting shy now.
Do you want me to get you another one?
What?
Something from Midsummer Night's Dream?
I mean, it doesn't matter.
You know
Don't be
something.
shy. Jump in there.
You don't have to.
No, I know. I'll try it. I feel bad because I didn't hear anybody else's.
Let's go, Joanne. You can do it. Let's hear it.
Okay. So this speech, then?
Yeah.
No more but e'en a woman, and commanded by such poor passion as the maid that milks and does the meanest chairs. It were for me to throw my scepter at the injurious gods, to tell them that this world did equal theirs, so they had stolen our jewel. All's but naught. Patience is sottish, and impatience does become a dog that's mad. Then it is sin to rush into the secret house of death, ere death dare come to us. How do you, women? What? Good cheer! Why, how now, chairman? My noble girls. Ah, women, look! Our lamp is spent. It's out. Good sirs, take heart. We'll bury him. And then, what's brave, what's noble? Let's do it after the high Roman fashion and make death proud to take us. Come away. This case of that huge spirit is now cold. Ah, women, women, come, we have no friend but resolution and the briefest end. And then she buries him.
Oh.
Bravo, bravo.
I know this, I know like what happened, but like, no, I haven't read that one. I read Julius Caesar. I'm getting more booze, I'll be back.
She will. Bring yourself a stool. You can sit over me. Well, that was better than anything than I would have read it. But I was saying that was better. Yes, I am. She doesn't need to hear that though. Yeah. Jesus. That's what happens when you've got a drunken wife. Anyway. Anyone else want to chime in with anything? Any other bits and pieces or fond memories or foul?
I have a fond memory. I went and saw in the fall, I got to see actors from the London stage.
Oh, cool.
And they did a production of Twelfth Night. And so this is half fun, depending on how you look at it. One of the reasons I got to go see them was I was in an acting class and we were covering Shakespeare. And we were talking about diction. We were in the very front row.
Mm-hmm.
I will use a little bit of hyperbole, but I don't think it's that far off. We all in the front row came out of there wishing we had a poncho because spit was flying all over. Because it had good diction.
Yes.
Was my diction?
Your diction was very good.
It's
Not
too
that
much
I noticed.
diction.
Spit on me, Dickie, by the way, was a phrase that was popular in Ireland when I was still young. I can explain that, but I don't think you'd enjoy the explanation as much as what you're imagining right now. Not like that. Oh my God, she's a filthy mind, doesn't she? Yeah, no. It's always good to be that close to the actors, isn't it? Although the splash zone is not always ideal.
I remember, so back when I was in college, I used to be part of this group called the Theater Outreach Program.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we take classic plays, most of them Shakespeare, condense them, and we'd also we try to change the verbiage around at the beginning of the play to be a little easier to understand, and then to ease them in, kids into it. And we perform them on campus, and then we'd go to other schools in the Bronx and perform them there. And I was put in charge of condensing most of the plays.
Ooh.
Yes, which is an interesting task. But I remember we were doing Much Ado. And we would read through these plays and try to okay, well, this section, this act and scene we can cut out, we can condense this section. And I mean, I know we probably committed a few sins, but it was the best we could do. And we get to this part where Benedict is talking about, it's towards the beginning, I'm never going to get married, rah.
Mm.
And Don says, of course you are. What are you talking about? And Benedict replies, if I do, hang me in a bottle like a cat and shoot at me. And he that hits me, let him be clapped on the shoulder and called Adam. And we were in fits because there is no universe where that phrase makes sense.
No, but it's wonderful.
And we looked through the notes of various Much Ado's, and they all said the same thing, which is, we have no freaking idea what this means.
Mm.
We're just okay, hang me in a bottle like a cat. What? Shoot at me. I'm sorry? And he that hits me, let him be clapped on the shoulder and called Adam.
Adam was a famous archer, so that makes the end of it make sense.
Okay, all right. One piece of this makes sense. The rest of us are sitting in a circle trying to imagine in a universe where you put a cat in a bottle and then somebody shoots it. And then if they hit it, you just go, you're Adam now.
So
I'm trying to figure out what the hell this has to do with anything and in what universe this could ever have made sense to another human being.
could the cat thing possibly have to do, and I know that cat hairs and intestines were used for violin strings. I have heard, I don't know if there's any truth to this, that they used them also for the bows of bow and arrows. So could it all be connected in that possible way is where I'm going with that.
I bet it fucking killed though when he did it. I bet that was like the highlight of the entire play, and that's all everyone was talking about.
Clap to the shoulder, clap to
Oh
the
my god,
shoulder.
did you see the cat bottle joke? Holy shit, I almost died. Oh my god, he is a fucking genius, the cat bottle joke.
See,
and like it was written up, you know, in the reviews. It was a
Mr.
bit
Burbage
slow
was quite
until they
good.
got to the cat bottle joke, and then everyone just loved it.
sadly, the play faded away after this early high point.
Well,
I
those lines did not make it into the final play.
I mean, I would keep it just because, like, fuck you, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm swearing a lot, sorry.
A lot? You're swearing as usual.
How dare you,
Normal,
Joey?
but they don't know that.
I'm not used to hearing swearing from my own mouth that much.
Yeah, it always annoys me when guys apologize for swearing in front of me. You're like, fuck off.
Oh my god, yes.
Back to the cat in the bottle joke. I remember Greg Moppin delivering that line, and I swear he did one of those looks on his face like, get it?
When I think of it, I always think that that's, what's his face? Benedict trying to be the clever, witty. I'm so clever. I always have a lot. Yeah.
Trying to be
was like, okay.
Sure, Benedict. Sure.
Trying to be the jester, Don John's jester, or Don Pedro's jester.
Yeah, but this is the great thing, you know. There was probably a meaning for it. It probably was the funniest line in the show.
Yeah, I'm sure Shakespeare wrote it, and it was brilliant, and not one word of that survives today.
Alternatively, it could have been Shakespeare going up to Burbage, and you know, like a cat in a bottle. Yeah. And Burbage is going, yeah. Yeah. So we're just going to get, okay, we won't cut this one. Or we're getting rid of page 72, because 72 is just junk. It's hard to know. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about this much of a distance. For all our knowledge of what was going on in the world back then, you know, those comedies just make, there's so much in those comedies that it's like, I have no idea what we could be doing here.
And we talked a little bit about, you know, well, the question whether Shakespeare thought that his works should be written down or not. And I mean, I've always heard Shakespeare was meant to be seen, not read. But, you know, that can be a person's opinion. But I also just sort of wonder how much of it, again, was improvised somewhat. And so, you know, if Shakespeare were here today, would he listen to that and go, why are you still using that? You know, use this joke instead, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Especially as most of his works that we have are written down by his actor friends.
Yeah.
You know, like, what was it? 7 years after he died, they put together the folio. I think I could be getting things mixed up. So how much of that is remembered and how much is like, oh no, we cut that, man. Yeah, but that was my best line.
Right.
Fuck it, why not? It is hard. I've always find it fascinating, you know, how much, as you say, how much was an improvisation that worked better than the actual script? How much of it was,
Maybe he never
this
wrote it.
is what I remember? Like there's what, 3 different versions of Hamlet, 2 different versions of Macbeth, 2 completely different versions of King Lear. There's such variation with any of the ones that were published during his time seem to have been different when they got republished or published in the folio. It is estimated that there was a lot of Pericles was forgotten. I think. Quiet you. Yeah, so I mean, who knows what actually made the cut? An old teacher of mine used to say that there's a good chance that the to be or not to be speech is Burbage saying, "Come on, Shakespeare, I need a better speech than these ones you've given me. Give me something about life and death." You know, seeing as he owned the company, like, do what you're told.
I do still love the moment that the speech in Hamlet of Polonius just listing off genres.
Oh God, yeah.
I was like, oh, I get it, but I would love to do an exercise with a class where they're like, okay, so we're gonna read this, and they just read through it. Every single person has one part. It's like, okay, read through the end of the scene with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and then when Polonius comes on, go through the speech where he lists off, these are the best players for either tragical, comical, historical, tragical, comical, historical, historical, pastoral, goes through all of that, and have them go through and be like, why do you think that list is there? And they're like, because he thinks it's funny. And then have someone playing Rosencrantz and Guildenstern need to change very, very quickly before the end of that speech. And then ask them, why do you think that speech is there?
Mm-hmm.
Because the first time we did it with costumes, and I looked over during that speech and everyone was like, I was like, I understand now. It's the best speech you could possibly put right before characters come in that were quite probably doubled with other people in the cast.
Yeah, they've already changed clothes once, haven't changed another 15 times. Yeah. No, it is always sort of one of those things that we like to think that every word is vital, but how much is like, that's just a joke. And I mean, I'm all in favor of that's just a joke, by the way, as Michelle painfully knows. Only too well.
That was when I offered to be his editor.
Yes, it was needed. It was needed. It still is needed. That's another matter.
Thank you for doing that, Michelle.
But yeah, I mean, I always think with the what makes the tragedies so great is the opportunity for humor in them.
Absolutely.
You know,
I just think that's what's the magic in Shakespeare is that he can clip along. It can be funny. It can be a speech that makes no sense or basically is there to help people change their clothes. But then, oh my God, wow, did you hear that? You know, and it's got everything. So, yeah.
I think my favorite comic bits in Shakespeare are the ones where he doesn't write very much in it and just lets the actor do whatever. The ones that come to mind are Malvolio showing off his yellow cross-gartered tights, and Benedict dodging behind bushes to make he's not overhearing this conversation.
Yeah.
Like,
I know, it's great.
Very few lines, so you have a lot of freedom to just, you know, make it slapstick, you know, do a couple of barrel rolls on stage, and it all works. And those tend to be the jokes that, you know, that they absolutely kill in audiences these days every time.
Yeah.
The audience knowing something the characters don't, thankfully, does not. It has aged incredibly well in that it still plays just as well as it did in that time.
Oh, and Falstaff putting a pillow on his head pretending that he's...
Okay.
Just, you know, you get it. All you have, you don't even have to be a very good actor. You can just say, all right, man, pillow on your head. You're pretending to be the king. Or, okay, now you're pretending to be Hal. And, you know, if you've got any comedic bones in your body, it's so easy to make it flipping hilarious.
Or let's turn this guy into an ass, but literally.
Yeah.
I love that because it's, Martin, it's a you joke.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, we all. I really, when I was younger, but not that much younger. Now that I think about it, that film Dead Poets Society. You know, oh, tugs at the heartstring. I grew up in a place fairly devoid of Shakespeare. I was like, oh, so that's Shakespeare. Very meaningful and deep and what have you. And then when I saw Midsummer Night's Dream performed for the first time, it was done as a 1970s British-style sex comedy. I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense now. Having read it being, this is all very, oh, yes, oh, peas blossom, put some shit in my hair, or whatever. But then you see I'm sorry to show off by quoting, but when you realize that all this is like just the people of this era were bawdy and dirty-minded and every bit as bad and as naughty as we are, it suddenly makes so much more sense. You know, I mean, you look at somebody, you know, what's his name? Benedict talking about shoving his, what in an invisible baldric. Yeah, it's like, whoa, that's barely safe for the censors, that is, a line like that.
Or even, honestly, if someone did a plain language speech version of the to be or not to be speech, I think it would be censored. Because if you wouldn't, we can go into high schools and be like, to be or not to be. But if you go into a high school and are like, I don't know if it's even worth being alive.
And in some sense,
if we're speaking of I'm sorry, high school performances, I remembered another moment that I want to share, which is there was this company that would come to my high school once a year and perform whatever Shakespeare play they had in their repertoire. And one year they come and it's Macbeth. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. Macbeth comes back to Lady Macbeth just after she, you know, has her speech about unsex me, blah, blah, blah. And the way they did it, they just like, okay, oh, you know, she's happy to see her husband. He's happy to see his wife. They kiss on stage. And I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and there was a gasp in the audience that they let them kiss on stage. Because in all of the plays that we did for our you know, musicals and whatnot, you weren't allowed to kiss. You just had to like hug and mean it. And immediately after the gasp, you could see the actors like taking a second to just like, oh my God, are you serious? Before going on, because they were professionals. And then the entire audience also laughed because it's like,
yeah.
But in all of the productions that was my freshman year production, and all the productions after that, if there was ever a scene where two characters would have kissed, they had them hug instead, because I think they were just,
yeah.
Oh my God,
hug and mean it.
Where the girls
that should be a t-shirt.
Kissed.
They probably, if they had a stage manager or a captain, they probably put it in the notes to do that whenever they went to your high school. Also, this reminds me of fun things that we had to do for traveling Hamlet to high schools. In our version, the cock did not crow. And we also had to change a line. I love this line. We referenced this line many times because it was hilarious that we had to cut it. And when you hear the line, it's pretty obvious. When Hamlet talks about sneaking in and stealing the letter from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern on their ship, he says he fingered their packets.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did the first read through and Amy was just like, no.
Why are you stealing these gems of literature from these poor high school students? It would make their year. They would be bigger Shakespeare fans for it.
We changed it to search their satchels.
Boo! Boo! Yeah.
Warning you guys, when this pandemic is over, I'm gonna hug you like I mean it.
And you too, Michelle. It's common. Yeah, that King Lear I was in, but we used to have school kids come into it because, you know, that's why you do certain Shakespeare plays. You might want to do it, but the board will always say, well, you know, that's on the leave insert next year. Really, we should mark it. And it's like, no, don't make us do it in front of kids. Don't make us do it in front of kids. No, it'd be great. It'll guarantee a full house. Who's going to want to see King Lear anyway? We ended up performing on St. Patrick's Day, which was weird. To nobody, by the way. But yeah, most of the kids who came in were from very nice, well-to-do schools in Dublin. And let's make sure we get the good students in so we don't embarrass the company. But there was one school that was renowned for actually being quite wealthy, but the school kids were generally bawdy. I don't know where they had the money from, because they were ordinary, you know, working class school kids. But they had a bit of money, so they'd go to do the things the whole time. And everybody dreaded when they came. And I'm sitting in the back stage, and from about half an hour before we go on, they got in early, and they were just roaring, and it was like, ooh, this is going to be a fun show, was my attitude. The old fellas who'd been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years, they were going, oh, okay, go back to reading the racing form. And then there was sort of like the young and I'm going to show the world what theatre can be types who, you know, I haven't seen in too many shows since. They're going, oh my God, they're like monsters. They're going to quieten down because it's Shakespeare, aren't they? They're going to quieten it down. Like, oh, they're not. So I did me bit, and I played it full serious, and they were laughing away at the beginning because I had a long beard at the time. And eventually they just went, he's doing his thing. I don't know whether they watched or whether they got doing something else, but they let me do it. The guy who was playing Edmund and he's a really good actor, but I've never seen him in anything since. He came along and he went out and you just see him getting frustrated with the interruptions. And eventually at one time, he gets through the first scene, he gets through the second scene, he gets to the bastard speech. And about halfway through, it's school kids hearing the word bastard. So obviously they're going to react. I did, and I was on the cast.
Bastard.
But they're laughing away. And at a certain point, he just drops the character completely and said, you assholes. This is the Australian guy I was talking about. You assholes. This is Shakespeare. And he gave out to them for like about 20 seconds. There was a moment's silence. And the laughter erupted louder than any other time in the show. And for the duration of it, with one exception, for the duration of the show, every time he was on, they were chanting his name once they found it out from the program. They were giving him all kinds of grief. Everybody else was fine because we said nothing. In fact, I think they really liked the King Lear. But when that poor bastard was on, metaphorical and literal, yeah, it wasn't fun for him. I can laugh about it now, and I also laughed about it at the time.
Yeah, Shakespeare.
When we were doing shows, so this isn't Shakespeare, but when we were performing at various schools in the Bronx, these are kids who do not have the theater conventions drilled into their heads yet. So I remember we did The Crucible, which was its own very hilarious clusterfuck in many, many ways, including one character who didn't have an assigned gender and was just sort of this genderqueer character running. because we fucked up with the costumes. Anyway, so, but these kids would just be like, oh shit, that bitch is crazy every time somebody was like, you know, Abigail would be going like, I want the light of God, I've seen the devil in the book, and they'd be like, oh shit, she's got it figured out. And like, it was great. We loved it because, you know, it's kids engaging with theater and they're like giving their candid reactions as it's happening. And you just have to try real hard not to laugh sometimes.
I do think sometimes we've lost out greatly by this. When people are very strict about the conventions of, oh, you have to be quiet until the end. I'd much rather hear any time people engaging directly. You know, it can be difficult though. I mean, I say this as somebody who is most clearly not an actor, because you know I won't say even call and response. The fact that you're in the middle of a big speech and somebody says "fuck," which I've seen and I loved. It's like, yes, we have succeeded. That guy is so into this, he can't stop himself. You know. And I've also been involved in shows like that Dodgy King Lear, where it's like, yeah, they really ought to be heckling us.
I have a fun high school Shakespeare memory from that freshman year reading of Romeo and Juliet. Thankfully, I had a lovely teacher, wonderful woman. But because we were 14-year-olds, she decided to show us the Romeo plus Juliet movie from the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a scene where she had to stand in front of the projector. And she would just like look up, and I'm like, nope, they're still going at it. And just go back in front of the projector.
Yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it. I did Romeo and Juliet, I think, at the age of 14. And we got the Franco Zeffirelli one because I'm much older than I look, I hope.
The Franco Zeffirelli one from '68, which shows Romeo's bare arse. It is a good arse. It is a decent looking arse. If I'm going to look at an arse on stage or screen, be it male, be it female, I want it to at least be as good a quality as that one.
Did you know the actress who played Juliet in that movie? For a split second, you see her boobs.
No, we didn't get to. Bullshit.
No, yeah, for a split second you see her boobs, and she was like 14 at the time.
No.
Not a shocker.
She wasn't allowed into the theater for her own for the
oh wow for the premiere
for the premiere because she was too young to see her own boobs on screen.
That is messed up beyond all recognition. I've heard of that kind of thing happening, but not that's your own set. That's wow. That's honestly, they're much and all as I like them, they're bits of meat. It shouldn't be the biggest deal in the world. You know, I mean, his arse was beautiful, which is fine, but it's just bits of meat. I'm not going to suddenly go out and I must hum something. That arse was amazing.
Yeah, but he was probably a man and she was not.
Exactly.
There is that.
Well, what is the rule as we go into even further NSFW territory? Isn't it the HBO rule that any kind of breast but no penis?
Yes.
Pretty much.
That's also bullshit.
It is for the MPAA ratings, you get exactly one instance of the word fuck for PG-13. But only if it's something like, oh fuck, this happened. If you say it in the context of I am going to fuck you, then that's
yeah.
A very good example of that is actually the Hamilton soundtrack.
Really?
Every time they say, like, he says a couple times when it's in reference to that, but the only time the word fuck appears in Hamilton is when they say motherfucking Democratic Republicans. Every other time it's cut off in order to maintain that rating.
That I would not have realized.
It's only after I heard that and then listened to the soundtrack, I was like, wait, this makes sense now.
Those, yeah, I mean, it's a weird setup with those ratings and that kind of thing. But
Yeah, there is.
there's an interesting thing that I've noted. Well, actually, and we're not going to talk about the etiology of the word fuck. I'm going to be cutting this in 5 minutes because I need to do stuff. Because it's 11:30 at night. A good time to start doing things. Let's round up with one last thing from everybody: story or quote or recipe or whatever.
Oh gosh.
One of my favorite things are the quotes that are so put on a pedestal but taken completely out of context. And to name two of those, "To thine own self be true" comes at the end of a speech of bland platitudes that only works if the characters are making fun of them. And "Be not afraid of greatness."
Yes.
Born great,
Yes.
some have greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them is from a freaking prank letter, and people are like, "Oh, this is so smart, it's Shakespeare," and it's a prank letter.
Yeah. Cool.
Everyone who takes those quotes seriously, I'm just laughing at them.
Yeah.
I remember getting tipped
why
off
we did
about that when I was in high school, and so I decided to just write inspirational quotes from Shakespeare that I found. And in Merchant of Venice, at some point, Antonio says, "I am dumb." Well, I just wrote quote from Shakespeare. "I am dumb." William Shakespeare.
I can dig it.
I mean, if we're taking things out of
Oh
context,
yeah.
the side of their characters, you might as well.
Well, I mean, you slap a name at the end of any old sentence, and all of a sudden it's inspirational. Anyone else want to pop up with an oddity or a peculiarity?
My favorite insult by Shakespeare is one that is just, I don't know why I laugh at this. It's not even the greatest insult, but "Thine face is not worth sunburning."
Oh, what's that one from? I don't remember that one.
Let me look that up real quick.
That's good.
Face is not worth sunburn.
Henry VIII.
And oh yeah, that's why I wouldn't remember. I've seen Henry VIII. I didn't remember that. It wasn't very good. I mean, it's not a good play, so. But the quote is great.
Scratching could not make it worse, and "'twere such a face as yours were."
Yes, that's another good one.
Say that one again.
Scratching could not make it worse, and "'twere such a face as yours were." Basically, it comes after Benedict says, "I will not date anyone ever," and Beatrice is like, "Good. So shall some maid scape some predestinate scratched face." And then he says, "Scratching cannot make it worse, and 'twere such a face as yours were." Or it's the other way around.
Yes, the other way around.
Yes.
Although personally, I'm also quite fond of the other end of the spectrum, which is King Lear. "Thou whoreson Zed, thou useless letter." Is that
Yeah.
you are like the letter Z, useless letter of the alphabet.
There's no worth, yeah. Well, my son's favorite one at the moment is to call me an egg from Macbeth. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that would be Redmond. He already is insufferable.
He's gonna be.
"Thou art as fat as butter" is another of my favorites.
Which is that, Debbie?
"Thou art as fat as butter."
That's
Was that directed
Yes.
at Falstaff? I feel like that was directed at Falstaff.
Quick look.
Probably.
I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, Joanne.
I'm gonna listen to my murder podcasts. See you later.
I'll see you in a little bit.
John has a thing about murder podcasts and relating them with pumpkin spice lattes.
It was in another of the Henry plays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Henry the Fourth, Part 2.
Thou art as fat as butter.
I think so, yes.
Probably Falstaff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is if it's in there. Well, I'm going to round up with the last lines of the last play of that owl fella, apparently, according to blah blah, which would be spoken by Prospero. Now my charms are all o'erthrown, and what strength I have's mine own, which is most faint. Now 'tis true I must be here confined by you, or sent to Naples. Let me not, since I have my dukedom gotten, pardon the deceiver, dwell in this bare island by your spell, but release me from my bands with help of your good hand. Gentle breath of yours, my sails must fill, or else my project fails, which was to please. Now I want spirits to enforce, art to enchant, and my ending is despair, unless I be relieved by prayer, which pierces so that it assaults mercy itself, and frees all faults. As you from crimes would pardon be, let your indulgence set me free. Good night, folks. See you maybe
Good night,
next
sir.
Night.
Join us again, then.
Everyone.
Have a great night.
You too.